The department head's fists flew at me right in the middle of the company lobby. None of my colleagues stepped in. They just spat their words like venom. Only God can save you now. I secretly pulled out my phone and called the CEO. Help me. The sharp smell of blood hit my nose. I was lying on the cold granite floor of the Pinnacle Holdings lobby. My whole body throbbed with a deep pain. My chest was tight from a heavy blow from DeMarcus, the man I had called my husband for the last 4 years. He towered over me in a $10,000 designer suit and gleaming leather shoes I had paid for, working nights on financial reports to get him a gift for his promotion. And now, the toe of that very shoe had just slammed into my ribs without a second thought, in front of hundreds of company employees. A crowd in stylish office clothes had gathered around, forming a circle. Not a single person stepped forward to stop him. They pulled out their phones, flashes flickering nonstop, while their jeers, pointing fingers, and whispers hung in the lobby like a thick cloud. In their eyes, I was just some country girl in a faded jacket with messed up hair, because I had just driven our old, beat-up Camry through the drizzling rain to bring a home-cooked meal in a Tupperware container to my esteemed husband. They didn't know that the lunch never made it to him. The moment I walked into the lobby, I saw with my own 2 eyes my righteous husband wrapping his arms around LaToya's waist and caressing her. LaToya, the assistant HR director, a girl from an influential family, right in the middle of the day. DeMarcus stepped toward me, his face low. His eyes were bloodshot, and he hissed the nastiest words a husband could say through his teeth. Are you following me? I told you to stay home. Why did you come to my company looking so disheveled? Are you trying to embarrass me in front of my staff? I've put up with a useless, dependent bird like you for 4 years, and I've had enough. As soon as he finished, LaToya gracefully stepped out from behind him. She was wearing a tight burgundy dress. She crossed her arms and smirked with contempt. She lightly kicked the food container that lay on the floor, its contents spilled out, and her sharp voice echoed through the lobby. Honey, look at yourself in a mirror. What makes you different from the women selling plates on the corner? DeMarcus is a top executive now, a future director. And you bring this cheap-looking meal here? Are you trying to poison him? A woman with no looks and no money needs to know her place and just leave on her own. Standing here screaming and crying, ain't you ashamed? It's disgusting for us to even have to look at this. The whispers from the crowd immediately backed her up. One of DeMarcus's subordinates stood with his arms crossed and said loudly, trying to suck up to his boss. That's right. The boss is talented, a real player. Marrying you is like putting lipstick on a pig. The fact that he only beat you down is you getting off easy. Somebody like you, only God can save you now. Get out of here so you don't dirty up the lobby. Only God can save you. That phrase hit my ears like a spark that had been sealed away for 4 long years. I slowly pushed myself up from the ice-cold floor, stumbling to my feet. Blood trickled from the corner of my mouth. The salty taste mixed with the rage flooding my brain. I didn't cry. A woman's tears only have value when they fall in front of someone who treasures her. In front of these heartless animals, crying would just be entertainment. They were sure I was a foolish, broke girl from the hood. DeMarcus was sure the executive chair he was sitting in was the result of his own natural talent. LaToya was sure that Pinnacle Holdings was her personal playground. They were too short-sighted, too stupid to even suspect that the 60-story glass tower they were standing in, the corporation they lined up at every month with their hands out for a paycheck, was actually under the absolute control of a shadow investment firm. And the person who owned 65% of the shares in that firm, the very hidden chairwoman that the entire Atlanta financial world feared, was none other than the woman in the faded jacket they had just beaten and humiliated on this very floor. Seeing me stand up without crying and begging like I usually did, DeMarcus was a little thrown off. But his patriarchal nature and his pride in front of his mistress made him raise his hand again, aiming to slap me one more time to completely destroy my self-worth. You still dare to stare at me? Today I'ma knock your teeth out to teach you a lesson about making a scene in my company. In that instant, as his big hand was about to come down, I stuck my hand in my jacket pocket and firmly pulled out my phone. It wasn't the old phone I used to call him with every day. It was a secure device in a black steel case, with no logos, a specialized tool used only for transmitting life or death orders in the shadow world of finance. I pressed the single programmed hotkey. The system connected directly to the hotline of the CEO's office at Pinnacle Holdings, where Malik, my right-hand man, the person I had personally placed in the CEO chair, was sitting. The phone rang for exactly half a second. A deep, powerful voice, full of absolute respect, answered immediately. Even though it wasn't on speaker, the dead silence of the lobby let me hear his every breath. I didn't call him CEO. I looked up, my eyes sharp as a razor, straight into DeMarcus's bulging eyes, and spoke in a weak, trembling, and pitiful voice, a perfect, blood-chilling performance. "Help me." DeMarcus froze. His hand stopped in midair. He frowned, looking at the strange phone in my hand, and then burst out laughing, the wild laugh of a man standing on the peak of his own delusions. "Who you callin'? Who you screamin' for help to? Some country-ass boyfriend from the sticks to come up here and save you? Let me tell you, even if you call God himself down here today, I'll have security grab you by the scruff of your neck and throw you in the dumpster. Go on, call him. Let's see what he can do about my position." LaToya also laughed hysterically, hooking her arm through DeMarcus's and playfully resting her head on his shoulder. "Ooh, I'm so scared. You gonna call some thugs to come tear up Pinnacle Holdings? Do you even know how strict the CEO here is? One word from DeMarcus, and the police will be here to put you in handcuffs for disturbing the peace." I slowly lowered the phone without hanging up. The line stayed open. Every sound, every insult from DeMarcus's filthy mouth and the fawning crowd was transmitted directly into Malik's ears on the 60th floor. I could imagine Malik shattering his coffee cup, his desk boiling with rage, hearing how his mentor, the chairwoman who took him in, was being trampled in the lobby of her own corporation. I straightened a messy strand of hair on my forehead, wiping the trace of blood from the corner of my mouth with the back of my hand. The pitiful weakness I had just shown was completely gone. My back straightened. The suffocating aura of a powerful woman, suppressed for 4 years, began to spread around me. I looked at DeMarcus. The corners of my mouth twisted into a cold smirk, as calm as the surface of a lake before a great flood. "DeMarcus, you're right. Your executive position is a big deal. So big that you think you have the right to stomp on other people's sweat and tears. So big that you think you can slap the face of the one who pulled you out of the gutter." I slowly took a step forward. The sound of my flat-soled shoes on the floor created so much pressure that he instinctively stepped back. "But you forgot one thing. In this world, the one who gives you a piece of bread can just as easily crush that piece with a single snap of their fingers." "What? What kind of nonsense are you talking?" he muttered. His confidence began to crack in the face of my fearless gaze. I didn't answer him. I leisurely turned, walked through the confused stares of the crowd, and headed straight for the massive, revolving glass door. They thought I was running away. They thought I was leaving in shame. But they couldn't even imagine that the moment I stepped over that threshold, the death sentence for DeMarcus's rotten career and his entire greedy family had been officially signed. The cold street wind hit my face. As I walked down the steps, I brought the phone to my ear. On the other end, Malik's voice came through, deep and holding back a terrifying rage. "Chairwoman, I'm sending the entire lobby security team down there. Anyone who dares to touch you will get their legs broken." I calmly got into a waiting black SUV. My voice was as cold as a 1,000-year-old glacier that could never be melted. "You don't need to come down to the lobby. Leave that trash. We'll clean it all up at once later." Immediately sign the termination order for that executive, DeMarcus, with the reason being gross violation of professional ethics and embezzlement of corporate funds. Block all his access cards. Shut down any access to the system. Immediately call our partner bank. Freeze all his and his mother's personal accounts. I want him to have lost absolutely everything before the sun goes down today. From his career and reputation to his last damn dime. Understood, Chairwoman. And what about the assistant HR director, LaToya? I narrowed my eyes, looking through the rain-streaked window. A cruel smile blossomed on my lips. Leave her. Let her see how the man she was planning to leech off of turns into a broke bum with empty hands. Let's see how many hours their love, built on equal social status, can last. Get started, Malik. The game of exposing these clowns is only just beginning. The black SUV pulled away, merging into the bustling Atlanta traffic. Behind me, inside that luxurious glass tower, an earthquake named Retribution was preparing to crash down directly on the heads of those arrogant fools. They despised me for my poverty. They hit me in front of everyone. Fine. I will use that same absolute power they are so eager to lick the boots of, to crush them. 4 years of my youth spent in patience and servitude to a rotten family were officially over. The devil was awake, and I wouldn't leave a single debtor unpunished in this chess game. Sitting in the black SUV, speeding through the pouring Atlanta rain, I lightly leaned my head against the cold glass. Raindrops streamed down the clear surface, smudging and distorting the view, just like my 4-year marriage had been distorted and twisted into the most ridiculous and disgusting farce. The blood at the corner of my mouth had dried, leaving a faint, salty taste. But that physical pain was nothing compared to the wound torn open in my chest. Everyone on the outside said I had hit the lottery, that I was a poor orphan from the deep country who came to the big city, that I must have been truly blessed by God to land a husband as talented and successful as DeMarcus, who had risen to an executive position in a giant real estate corporation. They said I had made it into the elite, that I was living a life of luxury, that all I needed to do was keep house and not worry about money. But who knew that this elite life they praised was really just a garbage pit wrapped in silk and satin? And it was me who had drained my life and my money to mold that fake shiny shell for them. 5 years ago, when I had just taken over the family investment fund after my adoptive father's sudden passing, I stood at the pinnacle of financial power. Men in expensive suits surrounded me. Their mouths always spoke sweet words, but their eyes greedily glanced at the multi-billion-dollar assets I held in my hands. A woman's heart, having been through the grinder of business, had already grown tough. I was disgusted by the calculations and love contracts that reeked of money. I yearned for a pure love, for a man who would love me for who I was, not for my title as chairwoman. And then DeMarcus appeared. At the time, he was just a pitiful sales manager, driving a hoopty, making a measly salary, and carrying a mountain of bank debt from his family's failed business. He approached me when I was playing the role of a humble receptionist. He gave me his umbrella in the rain. He bought me a cheap lunchbox when I pretended I forgot my wallet. He swore on everything holy that, despite being poor, he would give his life to protect me and never let me shed a single tear. The fake concern of a man at the bottom of society tricked me, an old fox in business, but a weak woman in matters of the heart. I believed him, believed blindly and foolishly. I decided to completely hide my true identity and enter his family with the status of a Cinderella, convincing myself that if I just tried hard enough, love would conquer all. But on the very first day as a daughter-in-law, I realized I had walked into hell itself. My mother-in-law, Mama Rose, was a woman of extreme views. She worshipped wealth and despised poverty. She had originally been a vendor at a flea market, but now, with a little savings, she had bought a house in the city and always beat her chest, calling herself a true Atlantan, part of the upper class. In her eyes, my arrival had defiled her family's fake noble traditions. I'll never forget those winter mornings when it was still dark, and she would bang on my bedroom door, forcing me to get up at 4:30 a.m. to cook a huge Sunday-style Southern dinner from scratch for her entire family just to complain about the seasoning. Using the dishwasher was strictly forbidden because she claimed I needed to earn my keep. When I set the table, she would loudly bang her fork on the edge of the plate, glare at me viciously, and throw insults as sharp as a razor. She called me a country bumpkin, a hungry leech clinging to her son's heels to change my pathetic life. She treated me worse than a maid, forcing me to wait on her fake socialite friends hand and foot while demanding I use my own savings to pay her credit card bills. But the most painful thing wasn't my mother-in-law's abuse, but DeMarcus's cowardice and silence. Faced with his mother trampling his wife, he would just coldly turn away, muttering that I had to endure it, that his mother was old, that since I was living off his family, I should know my place and obediently do the housework. For the sake of love, I gritted my teeth and endured. I wanted to help him rise. I secretly used the shadow power of the investment fund through my assistant, Malik, constantly feeding the juiciest and easiest contracts to DeMarcus's sales department. I created luck that fell right from the sky, cleared all obstacles in his business path, and forced partners to sign deals with him. In just 3 years, from a simple employee who got chewed out by his boss every day, DeMarcus shot up like a kite in the wind, straight into the chair of a high-level executive, gaining control over key projects at Pinnacle Holdings. I had molded a gold-plated, fake statue of glory with my own hands and placed DeMarcus on top of it. But power and money don't change a person's nature. They only rip off the mask of hypocrisy. Surrounded by flatterers, dressed in designer suits and wearing a Rolex, DeMarcus began to suffer from a messiah complex. He convinced himself that these successes were entirely the result of his innate talent. He started to look down on me, criticizing my simple clothes, wrinkling his nose at the smell of cooking in my hair. He said I was a dirty stain, a stumbling block that lowered his value and status as an executive. And Mama Rose, his mother, became more and more arrogant. She walked around the neighborhood with her nose in the air, bragging about her genius son, and never forgot to humiliate her daughter-in-law, calling me useless trash who couldn't even have a baby. And in the end, what was bound to happen, happened. Betrayal seeped into that house like a poison. He started leaving early and coming home late. His shirt smelled of another woman's perfume, stained with traces of burgundy lipstick. He openly carried on a love affair through texts with Latoya, the assistant HR director with a good family background, whom he craved to use as a stepping stone to jump into the director's chair. He thought I was blind and deaf. Or rather, he thought I was incapable of fighting back because I didn't have a dime to my name. They took my patience and my nobility for stupidity. They took my sweat, blood, and invisible assets to build their pathetic throne. And then, standing on that throne, they threw a basin of dirty water in my face. The black SUV braked sharply at a red light, pulling me out of those disgusting and dark memories. I pressed my hand to my chest and took a deep breath. The air filled my lungs, bringing a strange, cold, but sobering peace. DeMarcus, you once said that without you, I'd starve to death on the street. You thought I was a pathetic insect you could crush with the heel of your shoe. But you didn't know that the quiet woman you just stepped on was actually the one holding all the power. That slap in the middle of the corporate lobby today didn't break me. It was the final hammer blow that shattered the cocoon of submission I had locked myself in for these 4 years. The game of playing the good little wife is over. From this second on, I'm no longer Cinderella waiting for pity. I'm the one holding the noose tightened around your rotten family's neck. You love playing the role of high society? Great, sit tight, because I'm about to cut off all your oxygen myself, making you feel the sensation of suffocating to death, without any chance to call for help. The black SUV turned into the most elite and wealthy neighborhood in Atlanta, Buckhead, where glass skyscrapers soared to the heavens, reflecting the light like giant diamonds. This was where the elite, the dollar billionaires, and the financial magnates chose to live. The car stopped in front of the multi-level security system of the Sovereign Tower. A guard in a top-notch uniform, upon seeing my face through the glass, immediately stood at attention, nodded respectfully, and opened the gate, letting the car pass directly into the VIP zone. I got out of the car, ignoring the stunned look on the chauffeur's face, surprised that a woman in a faded jacket and with messed-up hair was received this way in such a luxurious place. Right in the huge gold-trimmed lobby, the building managers and dozens of staff were lined up in 2 rows, their heads bowed in greeting. No one dared to raise their eyes and look directly at me, because they knew. The woman standing before them was the owner of the most expensive penthouse at the top of the tower, as well as a major shareholder in the very corporation that managed this district. I entered a special elevator. The automatic retinal scanning system activated, taking me directly to the top floor. The elevator doors opened, and before my eyes was a living space of over 8,000 square feet, decorated in a style of modern royal luxury. Floor-to-ceiling glass walls offered a 360-degree panoramic view of magnificent Atlanta. Sparkling baccarat crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceilings. The floors were laid with monolithic, cold Calacatta marble. Everything here exuded the scent of power, money, and absolute greatness, a world that belonged to me, a world I had forgotten for 4 whole years for the sake of a cheap love. I walked decisively into the living room, forcefully threw down my old cloth bag, and tore off the faded jacket, tossing them straight into the trash. The poverty, the submission, the weakness of the wife of the DeMarcus family were officially shed and left behind with those dirty things. I headed straight to the bathroom, as huge as a 5-star spa, and turned on the hot water from the gold-plated showerhead, the stream pouring directly onto my head. The water washed away the dirt, washed away the smell of sweat, and the taste of humiliation that DeMarcus and Latoya had thrown at me this morning. I scrubbed my skin, erasing all remnants of that cursed family. When I stepped out of the bathroom, wrapped in a soft silk robe, I looked straight into the huge crystal mirror. The pale, submissive face was gone. My eyes were now deep, calm, but held 1,000 sharp blades within them. I walked to the walnut wood wall at the end of the room and placed my palm on a hidden control panel. The wall instantly slid open, revealing a dressing room so magnificent and luxurious it would make any woman hold her breath. Hundreds of outfits from the world's leading high-fashion houses hung neatly, sorted by shade. Limited edition Hermès, Birkin, and Kelly bags rested proudly in illuminated glass cabinets. A shelf with Patek Philippe and Richard Mille watches, as well as sets of jewelry with tens of carats of diamonds, sparkled dazzlingly. This is the real me. Imani Jones, the powerful chairwoman, the person who holds the fates of corporations in her hands, not some country girl letting lowlifes trample all over her. I chose a powerful, custom-made, charcoal black pantsuit from Armani that emphasized my slender but overwhelmingly powerful figure. I did sharp makeup, drawing clean winged eyeliner and painting my lips with a deep red lipstick, the color of blood, the color of revenge. I put on a pair of high-heeled Christian Louboutin shoes with their signature red soles. This armor, along with me, would trample all their illusions. Every step I took now echoed with the dry, steely, and authoritative click of my heels on the floor. The phoenix had officially shaken off the dirt and risen. Its wings were preparing to summon a firestorm that would burn DeMarcus's so-called patriarchal empire to the ground. I went out into the living room, where a computer system with a giant curved screen was already on. Malik, my loyal assistant, the nominal CEO I had placed in the driver's seat of Pinnacle Holdings, was waiting for instructions on a top-secret video call. He was in an impeccable suit, his face stern, and his eyes full of extreme anger, as he had witnessed me being beaten that morning. Chairwoman, I'm here. All departments, from HR and legal to finance, are in position and ready. Just waiting for your order, we will begin the hunt. I sat down in the velvet-upholstered armchair, crossed my legs, picked up a glass of expensive red wine, and swirled it slightly. The light from the chandelier passed through the wine, casting a demonic red glint on my cold face. I looked at Malik through the screen. The corners of my lips twisted into a cruel smirk, the smile of a ruler about to pronounce a death sentence on a pathetic bunch of ants. Excellent, Malik. They've had their turn playing their high society drama. Now, this stage belongs to us. I don't just want DeMarcus to lose his job. I want him to lose all his dignity, lose all his money, lose all his sources of life. I want him and his mother to understand what it feels like to be thrown out on the street with empty hands, to know the bitterest humiliation a man can endure. They said only God could save me. Then let me show them that in Pinnacle Holdings, I am their God. The overwhelming aura emanating from my every word made Malik on the screen hold his breath. In this bloody game, there is no room for mercy. The enemy struck me, and I will repay them with eternal destruction, leaving not even a trace of them behind. It's time for the blade hidden in my hands to strike, to sever every blood vessel of this worthless man and his bottomlessly greedy family. Comfortably settled in the power chair in my penthouse, I kept my eyes glued to the financial data continuously streaming across the large screen. The room was silent, except for the sound of a keyboard and Malik's deep, respectful voice coming from the central speakers. The feeling of holding power over life and death is truly intoxicating. It's like holding a sharp scalpel, slowly and precisely making incisions on the enemy's veins, letting their blood drain out drop by drop while they remain completely oblivious. Malik, report to me on the personal financial status of DeMarcus and Mama Rose, I said in a cold, commanding tone. Madam Chairwoman, according to data from our strategic partner bank system, there are currently 3 platinum credit cards registered in DeMarcus's name, with a total debt of almost $200,000. He spent all this money on buying designer goods, Chanel bags, and expensive watches for LaToya. In addition, he just used the authority of his executive position at Pinnacle Holdings to secure a mortgage loan for $500,000, planning to buy a luxury condo as a love nest for that girl. As for his mother, Mama Rose has 2 savings accounts totaling $300,000 in our bank. This is money she has been slowly siphoning from your earnings over the past 4 years, plus sums that he secretly embezzled from corporate funds. Hearing this, my lips curved into a mocking and contemptuous smile. $300,000, earned with my sweat and blood. Mama Rose brazenly stole it to open savings accounts, bragging to relatives that it was money her son was providing for her. And DeMarcus, a man who only knows how to be a freeloader, used the executive status I granted him to borrow tens of thousands to support a mistress. They built a fake, luxurious life on my indulgence. They thought this gold mine was endless, that they could brazenly trample me, and then go back to sleeping soundly on a pile of money. How laughable their extreme foolishness is. Very good. I lightly tapped my fingers, with their dark red nail polish, on the glass table, delivering the first blow. Immediately call the director of the partner bank. Demand that all 3 of DeMarcus's credit cards be blocked. Under the pretext of detecting suspicious transactions and suspected financial fraud, immediately cancel his $500,000 line of credit. Suspend the disbursement of funds. I want the cards in his wallet to turn into useless pieces of plastic right now. Understood, Chairwoman. And what about Mama Rose's savings accounts? Malik typed quickly on his computer, his tone sharp. For her, just blocking the account isn't painful enough. Send an urgent notification from the bank's internal anti-money laundering department. Freeze all of that $300,000 on the grounds of illegal origin of funds, suspected to be linked to DeMarcus's embezzlement of corporate funds from Pinnacle. Demand that she prove the legal source of her income. Otherwise, turn the case over to the police. Let's see if her loud mouth, accustomed to spewing curses, can still talk so bravely when she sees the money she's saved her whole life suddenly turn into worthless paper. I took a deep breath. Sparks of merciless revenge flashed in my eyes. Financial punishment is always the most painful blow for those who consider money their life. But this will only drain their reservoir. I need to smash the very water pump that DeMarcus is most proud of his career, the executive position he was just bragging about while humiliating me in the lobby. Next step, I pointed my finger directly at the screen. My voice sounded like a steel death sentence. Malik, immediately prepare an order for the suspension and immediate termination of the head of the commercial department, DeMarcus. Reason: a particularly gross violation of corporate rules, immoral behavior, and physical assault on another person in the workplace, which has caused serious damage to Pinnacle's image. Simultaneously, attach an internal audit report stating that he falsified project expenses to embezzle $200,000. Send this email to the thousands of employees in the corporation. I want him to be stripped naked and humiliated in front of everyone who just praised him. Madam Chairwoman, an excellent termination order. And what about LaToya, the assistant HR director? Should we fire her as well? I shook my head slightly. A cunning calculation flashed in my mind. No, leave her. If we fire her now, she'll play the victim, and they'll hug and cry together. I want to leave her in that chair so she can see with her own eyes how the man she wanted to leech money from is thrown out of the company like a pathetic scrub. I want her to understand that she bet her entire youth on a pile of crap. When DeMarcus is left with empty hands and up to his ears in debt, let's see how many minutes their love of equals lasts. That very elitism they are so proud of. The love of scumbags is built on money, and when the money runs out, they'll start tearing each other to pieces. That will be the best show. Understood. The chairwoman's order will be executed immediately. In 15 minutes, the termination notice will be on DeMarcus's desk, and the banks will simultaneously send messages about the card blocks. He is about to have the worst day of his life. I chuckled, leaning back deeply into the leather chair. The net has been cast, the blades sharpened to perfection and flying straight for the victim's throat. DeMarcus, you just raised a hand to me. You screamed that only God could save me. Well, now open your eyes wide and watch your sky come crashing down. You thought you were the hunter, but you never suspected that from the moment you stepped into this corporation, you were just a little mouse running in a glass cage that I designed with my own hands. The steady ticking of the pendulum clock in the living room beat out a rhythm. The countdown has begun. The order for punishment has been given. Over there, in that magnificent glass tower, that arrogant man must still be smugly caressing his mistress, completely unaware that the ground beneath his feet has split open, and the abyss of destruction has already opened its giant maw, ready to swallow his entire life. The storm named Imani Jones has officially hit, and I will not stop until there isn't even a scrap of armor left for them to cover their bodies. After leaving the massive lobby of Pinnacle Holdings, I didn't go back to that suffocating mansion that had been the prison of my youth. I sat calmly in the private study of my penthouse, sipping hot chamomile tea. My eyes, calm as a winter lake, were fixed on the internal surveillance system, connected directly from the Pinnacle Tower. True power is never noisy. It manifests only through the brutal silence of machines carrying out orders. And I was the one sitting in the shadows, pulling the invisible strings, to witness with my own eyes the fall of a man mired in delusion. Through the high-definition screen, I could see that DeMarcus was still standing in the first-floor lobby after slapping and insulting me. He seemed to be drowning in the feeling of the greatest victory of his life, the triumph of a patriarchal man. He adjusted his silk tie, smoothed his pomaded hair, and smiled smugly at his mistress, LaToya. Arm in arm, they swaggered into the elevator reserved exclusively for top management, leaving behind the fawning and admiring gazes of their subordinates. He was confident that expelling his poor freeloader wife from the company was an act of asserting the absolute power of a new executive. He had no idea that the elevator taking him to the 25th floor was actually an express train sending him straight to the depths of hell. The moment the elevator doors opened on the 25th floor, in the key area of the corporation's commercial department, an eerie, bone-chilling silence had enveloped the entire space. There was no sound of keyboards clicking, no phones ringing. Employees weren't bustling about, bowing and greeting their boss as usual. Hundreds of people in the open plan office were standing frozen, their eyes glued to their monitor screens, where an internal email marked top secret and urgent from CEO Malik's office had just arrived. DeMarcus frowned. The instincts of a schemer, accustomed to twists and turns, told him something was wrong. He let go of LaToya's arm and strode aggressively toward his brightly lit private office, but his steps suddenly froze. The glass door to the executive office was wide open. Inside wasn't his unattractive secretary who had prepared his coffee and was waiting for him. Sitting right in his leather chair, the one he had just occupied this morning, was the corporation's director of internal audit. Surrounding his desk, 4 auditors in black uniforms were hastily rummaging through documents, sorting them and bagging up physical evidence, seizing hard drives and packing financial documents into sealed boxes. 2 burly security guards stood with their arms crossed, strictly on either side of the door. DeMarcus's initial surprise quickly turned to the rage of a man whose territory had been violated. He roared. His innate arrogance made him still believe in his own inviolability. He burst into the office and slammed his palm on the glass desk with a loud bang. He shouted, demanding to know what kind of insane circus the director of internal affairs was running in his office and demanding that everyone get out immediately. He even dared to pull out the multi-million-dollar contracts he had just signed to threaten them, claiming that some petty, jealous person hated him for his talent and had orchestrated this document check. Watching this through the monitor, I laughed out loud. My cold laughter echoed through the huge penthouse. Talent? Multi-million-dollar contracts? This man really had mistaken my handouts for his own innate genius. He didn't know that all those projects had been secretly directed by me for him to sign, just to create a beautiful shell for him. The director of internal affairs didn't flinch at all in the face of DeMarcus's brazen behavior. He leisurely stood up, picked up a thick legal folder with the corporation's watermark, and tossed it right on the desk in front of DeMarcus's shiny shoes. It was the order for his immediate termination and suspension from his position. He stated clearly and concisely that DeMarcus was officially stripped of all positions. The reason was not only the act of violence and humiliation of another person right in the corporate lobby, which had tarnished its image. Worse, the audit team had obtained ironclad proof that he had forged documents and inflated project estimates to steal $200,000 from corporate funds over the past year. All these materials would be handed over directly to the police, to the white-collar crime unit. DeMarcus's face, red with anger, suddenly turned pale, ashen. His eyes widened, his pupils constricted. A cold sweat broke out on his back, soaking his expensive shirt. He picked up the order. His hands trembled like someone with Parkinson's disease. The pride and polish of a high-ranking executive shattered in an instant into 1,000 pieces stuck to the floor. His brain seemed unable to process this terrifying amount of information. Termination, embezzlement, referral to the police. How could this have happened so quickly and precisely? He had acted very carefully, moving the cash flows through numerous shell accounts. He stumbled back 2 steps, desperately shaking his head, refusing to believe the truth. His cowardly survival instinct took over. He hastily brought up CEO Malik as his shield. He screamed that he was the CEO's man, that he brought profits to the corporation, and demanded a personal meeting with Malik to sort everything out. But in response to his desperate convulsions, the director of internal affairs just smiled contemptuously. He stepped closer and hissed right into DeMarcus's face that it was the CEO himself who had received a direct order from the hidden chairman of the board of the investment fund to sign this termination. The chairman said something that sent a chill down the spine of the entire management team. Anyone who doesn't know how to appreciate a ride or die who went through poverty with him is also trash in business. DeMarcus felt as if he had been hit with a sledgehammer. The words ride or die woman pierced his ears like a clap of thunder. The pale, exhausted face, the cold smile, and the razor-sharp gaze with which I had left the lobby suddenly flashed in his memory. My warning, the one who gives you a piece of bread can just as easily crush that piece, rang in his ears like a curse. He no longer had the strength to stand. His legs gave out, and he collapsed onto the office carpet. Everything happened too quickly, too brutally, not giving him a single second to catch his breath. His top management access card was ripped from his neck by a security officer. His laptop and personal documents were completely confiscated. 2 burly guards came up and mercilessly grabbed the man who was once so majestic under the arms and dragged him out of the office. In the hallway, hundreds of employees looked at him with contempt and schadenfreude. LaToya, his mistress, who had just been nestled on his shoulder, now hastily retreated and hid in the crowd, covering her face with her hands so she wouldn't be recognized. DeMarcus was dragged into the freight elevator and mercilessly thrown onto the sidewalk in front of the corporation's gates, the same place where just an hour ago he had humiliated me. His empty leather briefcase rolled across the rain-wet asphalt. The trader's peak of glory was officially shattered into a dirty puddle. But this was only the prelude. The most brutal punishment was still waiting for him. Thrown out of the Pinnacle Tower like a pathetic scrub carrying a plague, DeMarcus stumbled along the Atlanta sidewalk. He was like a body without a soul. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his tie torn. His eyes were empty, full of panic and despair. His phone buzzed continuously with messages from the banks. Credit cards blocked. Personal accounts frozen for investigation. The $500,000 line of credit canceled. From a man holding money and power, in just 2 hours, he had officially turned into a beggar, carrying accusations of embezzlement and the threat of a prison sentence hanging over his head. In a moment of extreme desperation, his cowardly instinct to cling to life led him to the place he considered his last safe haven, LaToya's luxury apartment. He was sure that his little mistress, whom he had spoiled so much, the woman who swore she loved him for his talent and not his money, would open her arms to him and use her family's connections to save him from this deadly catastrophe. He scraped together the last few small bills from his pocket to pay for an Uber to LaToya's apartment. The security deposit for this apartment had been paid with money he had stolen from the corporation. The furniture inside had also been bought by him on his credit card to please the beauty. He thought he was returning here as if to his own home, but he was too naive. He had no idea that even when he was at the peak of his executive career, I had secretly hired a detective to install a microscopic listening device, disguised as an air purifier filter, in the living room of that apartment. All the dirty scenes, all the squabbles of these parasites, I was leisurely sitting in my penthouse, enjoying their every word. DeMarcus rang the doorbell desperately. The door opened. LaToya stood on the threshold. She had already washed off her makeup and was dressed in a thin silk pajama set. But her face no longer held the playful smile and sweet words like baby as before. She looked DeMarcus up and down as if he were a pile of trash washed up on her doorstep. Toya, let me in. Something terrible happened. They set me up. The company fired me. And my bank cards, my accounts, they're all blocked. The auditors dug up the papers on the $200,000 I took from the project last month. Now they're threatening to call the police and send me to prison. Save me. Call your father. Ask him to use his connections to get me out of this. You're all I have left. Stay right there. Don't you dare step into my house looking all dirty and stankin' like a loser. You'll mess up my imported wool rug. Save you? Get you out of this? Are you delusional or have you lost your mind? My father is a department director in the state government. He doesn't have time to save a criminal who stole corporate money. You want to drag my whole family into the mud with you? What are you talking about, Toya? This morning you said you loved me. You said when I become director we'd get married. The deposit for this apartment, I paid for it. That Hermes bag on the table, I bought it with my card. Now that I've stumbled, now that they've set me up. You're my future wife. You have to help me. Give me that bank card in your name. There's $50,000 in cash on it that I gave you to hold. I need money for a lawyer to make this go away, or I'm going to prison. Future wife? Stop dreaming. Women in Atlanta love with their eyes but live with their brains. Honey, when you were an executive, when you had money, when you spoiled me and took care of me, I called you my man. Now you're an unemployed white-collar criminal, up to your ears in debt. What do I need you for? To break my back taking care of a bum? And don't even dream about that $50,000. That's my payment for the youth I wasted. My compensation for the emotional distress of wasting my time on a good-for-nothing like you. Money that's in my pocket belongs to me. Be smart and get out of here before I call building security and have them put you in handcuffs for harassment. You dare to play me, you bitch? You think I don't know your real face? You're a gold digger. You saw I had power and status and latched onto me. You egged me on to beat and kick my country wife out onto the street so you could take her place. And now that I'm left with nothing, you're squeezing me dry like a lemon. I'm not going anywhere. This apartment was rented with my money. I'm living here, and I'll report you as an accomplice in spending the money I stole. Try it if you're so smart. The lease is in my name. You gave me the bags voluntarily. It's all in black and white. Where's your proof to accuse me? A married man stepping out who dumped the woman who shared his struggles for years for a young girl. Karma came for you. You deserve this. Looking at your loser face right now makes me just as sick and nauseous as you looked at your ex-wife this morning. Instant karma, get out of my sight. The door of the luxury apartment slammed shut with a crack. The sound of the impact echoed in my earpiece. The dirty drama of this couple's transactional love was completely over. I took off the Bluetooth earpiece, tossed it on the glass table, and laughed out loud from the bottom of my heart. My laughter echoed through the luxurious penthouse, dissipating all the resentment that had built up over the years. Brilliant, just flawless. There is no knife that cuts more painfully and deeply than the one plunged into your back by your own accomplice. DeMarcus had thrown away a priceless diamond with his own hands to pick up a stone covered in mud. Once, he used my patience and money as a springboard for his own self-satisfaction. After climbing to the top, he threw me out onto the street. And now that he has fallen into the abyss, it was the very mistress he protected and cherished who delivered the final kick, sending him to his certain death. The scrap I spat out is now rejected even by a broke loser. What does it feel like to fall from the top of the heavens to the very bottom of the swamp? To feel the humiliation of being thrown out by your mistress like a dirty rag? Is that easy to swallow, DeMarcus? But this game of being torn apart is just a prelude, because elsewhere, your mother's arrogant wall is also crumbling to pieces under my blows. While DeMarcus was writhing in humiliation in the hallway of his mistress's apartment, his mother, Mama Rose, was still floating on cloud nine in her own delusions. She was completely unaware that the heavens of the family had been shattered. Mama Rose, with her new money character, had completely transformed since the day DeMarcus took the executive chair. She dressed in silk dresses, wore glittering gold chains around her neck, and spent all day gathering with other fake socialites in the neighborhood to brag about her son's wealth. She used the $300,000 stolen from my earnings to open savings accounts and premium credit cards, and considered herself a representative of the highest aristocracy. In her eyes, I was just a free maid, a dirty country girl unworthy of crossing the threshold of her noble family. Around 3 p.m., thanks to a GPS tracker installed in the car I had once bought for DeMarcus and which Mama Rose now used with a personal driver, I knew she was at Lenox Square, the most luxurious shopping mall in Atlanta. I took a sip of chamomile tea and signaled for Malik to bring up the surveillance footage from the Cartier boutique where she was standing. Mama Rose was dressed in a sapphire velvet dress. Her hair was styled in intricate curls. She came with 3 middle-aged friends, all dressed in designer clothes. They entered the Cartier boutique with an arrogant air, looking down their noses at the salespeople like they owned the place. Mama Rose pointed her finger at a diamond necklace worth almost $50,000 lying in the display case. "Get that necklace out. I want to try it on. Let my friends see." My son was officially appointed a top-level executive at Pinnacle Holdings today. He told me not to hold back on my shopping. Money is not an issue. This necklace for a few measly thousands is pocket change for him. My boy is very caring. Not like that useless freeloader at home. This morning I convinced DeMarcus to throw her out. We need to bring a girl from a noble family into our family, someone worthy of our status. Her friends, hearing this, sighed continuously and flattered her to the heavens, praising her for being lucky enough to have such a golden son. Mama Rose smiled from ear to ear, smugly tried on the diamond necklace, and twirled in front of the mirror. After admiring herself to her heart's content and satisfying her vanity, she theatrically pulled a black platinum credit card from her handbag, proudly held it between 2 fingers, and handed it to the cashier. "Charge it and wrap it up nicely." The salesperson respectfully took the card and inserted it into the POS terminal. A beep sounded, and a bright red message appeared on the machine's screen. The girl frowned, swiped the card a second time, then a third. But the result didn't change. She looked at Mama Rose in confusion. Her voice remained polite, but there was already an awkwardness in it. "Ma'am, your transaction was declined. The system says the card has been blocked by the bank. Would you like to pay with cash or another card?" Mama Rose's face, covered in a thick layer of powder, instantly contorted. Her arrogant smile froze. Her friends, who had just been laughing and chatting animatedly, suddenly fell silent, casting suspicious glances at her. Mama Rose flinched, feeling terribly insulted. She slammed her hand on the glass display case, shouting loudly for the whole store to hear. "What are you talking about? My card is a VIP card. A card with a limit of tens of thousands. My son just topped it up. How can it be blocked? Your stupid machine must be broken. Get the manager here immediately. Do you even know who I am? I am the mother of an executive from Pinnacle Holdings. I can buy your whole damn store." Just as she was yelling and making a scene, the mobile phone in her handbag rang continuously, It was the bank's hotline number. She irritably swiped her finger across the screen, intending to curse out the bank employees, but a cold, emotionless voice from the other end was loud enough for her friends standing nearby to hear as well. "Hello, Miss Rose. We're calling from the Financial Fraud Prevention Department. We are informing you that all your savings accounts totaling $300,000 and the credit cards in your name have been emergently frozen by order of the investigative authorities. The origin of the funds in your accounts is suspected to be directly linked to the embezzlement of corporate funds and property fraud by your son, Mr. DeMarcus, at Pinnacle Holdings. Mr. DeMarcus is currently terminated from the corporation. A criminal case is being prepared against him. We require you to report to the police within 24 hours to cooperate with the investigation. Please take note." The phone slipped from Mama Rose's wrinkled hand and fell with a clatter onto the shiny marble floor. Her whole body shook as if from an electric shock. The color of her face changed from crimson to white, and then to ashen gray. Her knees buckled. She couldn't stand, stumbled backward, and sank with a thud onto a fitting stool. Fired. Embezzlement. Police. It can't be. My DeMarcus is an executive. He makes money, she muttered in an extreme panic attack. Her eyes rolled back. Her breathing became shallow, like an asthmatic's. Her elite friends, who had just clearly heard every word of the phone conversation, especially the words embezzlement, termination, and police, changed their attitude faster than flipping pancakes. They hastily moved away from Mama Rose, as if from a plague victim. One of them curled her lip. Her eyes held boundless contempt. "Oh my, and I thought she was a rich lady. Turns out the shopping money is what her son stole from the company. What a disgrace. Thank God I didn't borrow from her, or I'd be considered an accomplice. Let's go, girls, before we get into trouble. We might catch her broke habit of stealing." With that, the three women with designer bags turned and left, leaving Mama Rose trembling and shrinking on the stool. The mall security guards, seeing the mess, and that the customer without the ability to pay was also making a scene, approached with a determined look. "Ma'am, if you can't pay, we ask you to remove the necklace and leave the store so we can continue our business. Please do not disturb other customers." Mama Rose was practically grabbed under the arms by two guards and dragged out of the luxurious Cartier boutique. She was thrown into the mall corridor under the hundreds of curious gazes and mocking whispers of passers-by. The shiny throne, the mask of a noble lady she had used to trample and humiliate me for 4 years, had been completely torn off, revealing her greedy, pathetic, and lowest essence. I sat in my penthouse, smirking coldly as I watched the scene on the screen. When the money stops, the loyalty drops. This public humiliation was just the beginning. "Mama Rose, you said I wasn't worthy of your family. You threw me out on the street. Well, now get ready to go back to the gutter where you belong. Evil always begets evil. My punishment will leave your family not a single chance for salvation." The game of destroying traitors is just entering its most interesting phase. The Atlanta weather had entered the first days of fall. The scorching daytime sun was replaced by piercingly cold winds. As night fell, I sat calmly in the private study of my penthouse. The light from 3 huge monitors fell on my face, which expressed not a single emotion. On the screens were graphs of rapidly falling indicators for the real estate projects being implemented by Pinnacle Holdings, especially the mega project New Atlanta, the beloved brainchild that DeMarcus had seized control of using any means necessary, even stepping over my blood. He once stood before hundreds of employees and loudly declared that this project would make his name a legend in the real estate world. But I hadn't seen a legend yet. Instead, I saw a mass grave that he had dug for himself and his greedy family with his own hands. I picked up a cup of chamomile tea. The pure aroma went down my throat, soothing the tension of a long day spent managing giant financial flows. In this battle, I didn't need to show my face, didn't need to argue or throw jealous fits like weak women do. I used the very language they worshipped most to suffocate them: money and power. DeMarcus was sure that his termination and the freezing of his accounts were just a temporary accident, caused by the audit department overstepping. He still harbored the illusion that with his status as a former project executive and the shady connections he had diligently built with corporate money, he could easily attract outside investment to cover the stolen $2 million and avoid prison. He thought that if the construction of the New Atlanta project continued, he would have a chance to make a comeback. How naive. How can a small-minded fool ever comprehend a billionaire's vision? He didn't even guess that the entire supply chain of materials, from steel and cement to the infrastructure contractors, had already been secretly bought out by my fund, which had acquired a controlling stake in their shares 6 months ago. I had cast a giant net and was just waiting for the moment he was right in the center to pull it tight. I pressed the intercom button on the desk, connecting directly with Malik. My order was brief but carried the most destructive force. Malik, it's time to cut the oxygen line to the New Atlanta project. Give the order to all building material suppliers. Immediately cease all deliveries. Demand that they send urgent letters demanding payment of overdue debts. 100% cash payment for the previous months within 24 hours. If Pinnacle Holdings can't pay due to the blocked accounts, have the subcontractors bring workers and trucks to block the entire construction site. Not a single brick, not a single piece of rebar should get in there. Bleed that project dry. Less than an hour after this death sentence, the construction site of the New Atlanta project turned into a chaotic battlefield of complete despair. Through the surveillance system, I saw dozens of heavy trucks with cement and steel turning around one by one, refusing to unload. Engineers and workers in hard hats rushed back and forth, not understanding what was happening. The main gates of the site were quickly surrounded by hundreds of workers from the subcontractors. They held up picket signs, parked cranes and excavators right across all entrances and exits, and continuously shouted, demanding payment for materials and their labor. DeMarcus, who was hiding in a street-side coffee shop after his mistress LaToya kicked him out, received the news from his remaining people on the site and panicked so much that he dropped his coffee cup right on the ground. He hastily called a cab and rushed to the scene, hoping to use the authority of a big boss to quell the riot. In a wrinkled shirt and with disheveled hair, he pushed his way through the crowd of angry workers. He tried to raise his hands, raised his voice, shouted for everyone to disperse, and promised that the money would arrive in a couple of days. But he didn't know that these hard-working men had already received a message from their directors. Pinnacle Holdings had fired DeMarcus, and now he was just a con man drowning in debt. Several enraged workers rushed at him, grabbed him by the collar, and started pushing and cursing him foully. They exposed his false promises, demanding that he cough up the money and pay for their sweat and blood. The arrogance of a man used to yelling at his subordinates completely vanished, replaced by cowardice. He cowered, covered his head with his hands, and started backing toward the construction site fence to escape the angry blows of the crowd. However, his nightmare didn't end there. The angry workers were just people legitimately demanding their money. The real messengers of death were approaching from the other end of the street. 4 black SUVs roared up and braked sharply in front of the construction site gates, kicking up a cloud of dust. Dozens of tattooed thugs in black jackets jumped out of the cars, clutching iron bars and baseball bats. Leading them was a crime boss nicknamed Big Bo, the most notorious loan shark in the suburbs. I watched this through the screen with a cold smirk. When DeMarcus needed cash to buy an apartment, designer bags for his mistress, and bribes to forge documents, he had secretly borrowed $1 million from Big Bo's gang at exorbitant interest rates. He was sure that as soon as the first sales in New Atlanta began, he could easily withdraw money from the company to repay the debt. But now, the project was frozen. He had been fired from the company, and rumors of his bankruptcy spread through the criminal underworld like wildfire. The black market lenders, vultures with the best sense of the smell of death, understood that the debtor had lost his ability to pay, and the law of the criminal world demands that debts be collected with blood before the person has a chance to escape. Big Bo strode forward. The workers, seeing the aggressive crowd, automatically parted ways. The gangster headed straight for DeMarcus, who was cowering by the fence. Without a single word of warning, Big Bo delivered a powerful kick straight to DeMarcus's chest. He screamed in agony, flew backward, hit his back on a pile of broken bricks, and spat out a clot of fresh blood. "You damn dog, DeMarcus. You got some nerve. You took my money to keep a girl. Now the company kicked you out. The bank blocked your accounts. You decided to screw me over. $1 million in principal plus 300 bands in interest. If you don't cough it up today, I'll put a bullet in both your kneecaps and throw you in the Chattahoochee River," Big Bo roared. The switchblade in his hand clicked open, its cold blade flashing. DeMarcus was on his knees in the mud, clutching his aching chest. His tears and snot mixed with the construction dirt on his face. The pride of an executive, the mask of a respectable intellectual, was completely torn off, revealing his vile and utterly pathetic essence. He put his hands together, begging and bowing like an animal pleading for its life. Big Bo, have mercy. They set me up, the company screwed me over. Give me a couple of days. I still have friends, business partners. I'll borrow. I'll find the money to pay you back. I beg you, don't kill me. If you cripple me, how will I work to pay back the debt? Please spare my life. Big Bo spat on the ground, stepped on the back of DeMarcus's hand with the sole of his boot, and crushed it with force, causing him to howl in pain. Friends? Partners? You think there's a single fool left in this city who'll vouch for an economic criminal under investigation like you? I'm giving you exactly 24 hours. If I don't see the money tomorrow, I won't just break your legs. I'll go after your mama too. We'll settle up in full. Don't even think about hiding or running. With that, the thugs smashed the windows of the security guard's booth with their bats for intimidation, got into their cars, and sped away, leaving DeMarcus lying in a muddy puddle. His whole body ached. His clothes were torn. His face was swollen, and his eyes were full of wild terror. He crawled out of the construction site under the mocking whispers of the workers. The man who once stood at the top and despised others' lives and dignity was now himself at the very bottom of humiliation and mortal fear. In this play of punishment, there is no room for tears of mercy. This is the inevitable law of karma. As it is said, so it shall be done. And I am just the person who sped up the process. Night fell on Atlanta. The neon lights of expensive restaurants and bars began to light up the central streets. For those with money, the night is a paradise of pleasure. But for DeMarcus, this night was the huge maw of a monster ready to swallow him. Brutally beaten by thugs, with his own life and his mother's life threatened, he dragged his battered, broken body to a public restroom by the road. He splashed cold water on his face, trying to wipe the dried blood from the corners of his mouth with the torn sleeve of his shirt, trying to make himself look less pathetic. His base survival instinct told him, crying here means waiting for death. He needed to grasp at the last remaining connections, those so-called loyal brothers with whom he had pounded his chest at the table during drinking binges. A ghostly hope flickered in his mind. That evening, in the VIP lounge of the Empire Restaurant, a place for elite business meetings, a private party was being held by the brotherhood of partners he had once promoted. These were Jamal, the director of a steel supply company, and Kenny, a major infrastructure contractor. DeMarcus had used his executive power, used money from my fund, to give them juicy contracts, helping them pocket tens of millions of dollars. At the table, they raised their glasses, swore eternal friendship, called him their great benefactor, and promised to share both joy and sorrow with him. DeMarcus was sure that if he just showed up there, fell to his knees, and begged they, remembering his past favors, would chip in and lend him the $1 million to pay off the thugs and save his life. With the tracker on his old phone, which he hadn't gotten rid of, I knew exactly where he was going. Sitting on the leather sofa in my penthouse, I gently swirled my wine glass and turned on the feed from a micro camera that one of my informants among the waiters had previously installed in the Empire Restaurant's VIP lounge. I wanted to witness the most brutal moment in this man's life, the moment when his faith in fake material values would be shattered into dust. The door to the gilded VIP lounge of the restaurant creaked open. Inside, there was a thick smell of expensive cigars and high-end whiskey. Jamal and Kenny were hugging half-dressed hostesses by the waist, laughing loudly, and raising toasts to new business schemes. In the midst of the fun, the door was quietly pushed open. DeMarcus entered, staggering and trembling. He was a pathetic sight. His swollen, bruised face didn't fit in with the sparkling luxury of the room. The music died down. The laughter abruptly stopped. The girls narrowed their eyes, looking at the ragged stranger at the door with clear contempt. Jamal put down his wine glass, frowning as he looked at DeMarcus. His tone was surprised, but there was a coldness and distance in it. Oh, if it ain't Director DeMarcus. What happened to you? Did someone get jealous and beat you to a pulp? And how did security even let someone looking like this into the VIP lounge? DeMarcus swallowed the bitter lump in his throat and took 2 steps forward. He folded his hands in front of his chest. The pride of a man who once sat at the head of the table was now trampled. He had become just a beggar asking for charity. Jamal, Kenny, my brothers saved me. They set me up at the company, fired me. The bank froze all my assets, and now thugs are after me. They're demanding I pay back $1 million debt. If I don't give them the money tomorrow, they'll kill me and my mother. You remember how I pushed contracts your way, helped you win bids for the new Atlanta project, right? Chip in, lend me $1 million. As soon as I get through this hell, I'll work for you for the rest of my days. I'll pay you back in full. Silence fell in the VIP lounge for a few seconds, and then Kenny suddenly burst into loud laughter. The heavy-set man with a massive gold chain around his neck stood up and walked over to DeMarcus. He lightly patted him on the cheek, a light slap expressing the utmost degree of humiliation. "Aw, DeMarcus, you talk so movingly. Brotherly bonds, old favors. Are you an idiot? Business is war. Money on the table, goods delivered. When you were an executive, when you had power, we invited you for drinks, paid you your kickbacks on time and honestly. What debts are there between us for you to talk about favors? Now you're an unemployed economic criminal under investigation. You think we're crazy? To throw $1 million at a dead man walking like you? Kenny, you can't be so heartless. $1 million for you is just a tiny fraction of the profit I brought you from the project. I'm begging you, save my life." DeMarcus collapsed. His knees hit the velvet carpet of the VIP lounge. He slumped against the wall, burying his face in his hands before those he considered his loyal brothers. Tears of helplessness streamed from his eyes, running down his bruises. Jamal approached with a full glass of cold beer and stopped right over DeMarcus's head. He smirked. His eyes held the ruthlessness of a vulture. "DeMarcus, the rules of the game in this society are very simple. When you have money, you're a brother. When you're empty-handed, you're worse than a broke loser. We do business, not charity. Especially not with a pathetic man who dumped his ride or die for LaToya, and then she herself threw him out on the street. Even God has turned his back on a rotten person like that. What chance do we have? Get up. You're dirtying the carpet." With that, Jamal mercilessly tipped the glass, pouring the cold beer right over DeMarcus's head. The beer soaked his disheveled hair and ran down his humiliated face. The smell of alcohol mixed with the smell of blood, creating a nauseating combination. The girls around giggled, covering their mouths with their hands, and pulled out their phones to record a video. DeMarcus was stunned. His whole body trembled from the cold and the humiliation that penetrated every cell. He realized that the fake elite shell he had been so proud of, the connections he had bought with my money, were all just a pile of trash. When he was stripped of his power, he became a nobody. Kenny took a $20 bill from his wallet, crumpled it into a ball, and threw it right in DeMarcus's face. The bill fell onto the carpet. "Take this 20, go outside, call a cheap Uber to your slum. Or buy yourself a loaf of bread, eat up before the thugs gut you, and never show your face here again. Get lost." 2 restaurant security guards, on Jamal's order, immediately entered the room, grabbed DeMarcus by the armpits, and lifted him into the air. He had no strength to resist. His gaze was empty and glassy. He let the guards drag him out of the VIP lounge and throw him onto the steps in front of the restaurant. The rain started to drizzle again in Atlanta. He lay sprawled on the wet sidewalk, and the $20 bill, caught by the wind, stuck to a muddy puddle. Extreme loneliness engulfed his life. Abandoned by his wife, thrown out by his mistress, fired from his company, hunted by thugs, and now trampled by his friends like an animal. Watching the monitor, I slightly lowered my glass and smiled a satisfied smile. "Are you in pain, DeMarcus? This humiliation is nothing compared to the evening you threw me out, when you humiliated me in the middle of the corporate lobby. When an ungrateful traitor is cornered, the whole world turns its back on him. But the game isn't over yet. When a rat is cornered, it gets desperate. It looks for the most powerful force it can imagine to beg for mercy. And I, the hidden chairwoman of the investment fund, have prepared the perfect trap for him, waiting for him to step right into it, to deliver the final, fatal blow. Despair is a cruel poison. It gnaws at a person's mind, making them cling to any illusion, even the most insane ones. DeMarcus, after his brothers trampled him and threw him onto the street like stinking garbage, completely lost his sense of self-worth. The thugs had given him until noon the next day. Either he hands over the $1 million, or his mother pays the price, and he gets put in a wheelchair. In a fit of desperation, the last life raft flashed in his mind. The hidden chairman of Apex Capital, the most powerful shadow figure who held the entire financial life of Pinnacle Holdings in his hands. He was sure that if he could meet the chairman, fall to his knees, give away all of Pinnacle's internal secrets, or even offer himself as a chained dog, the chairman would take pity and, with a snap of his fingers, produce the $1 million to save him. Through a shady financial broker he knew, DeMarcus sold the fake Patek Philippe watch, the only thing he managed to offload, and bought valuable information. Tonight, the chairman of Apex Capital would be in a secret VIP lounge on the top floor of a tower in Buckhead to discuss business. At exactly 10 p.m., I was sitting, legs crossed, on a deep red velvet sofa, in the middle of the quiet, private lounge. There were no bright lights, only the dim golden glow of classic crystal sconces. I was wearing a custom-tailored, charcoal black pantsuit, and a wide-brimmed British-style hat hid half of my face. Behind me stood Malik and two tall security guards, motionless as stone statues. The heavy oak door slowly creaked open. Security pushed DeMarcus inside. He staggered in, looking pathetic. Dirt and dried blood were still visible on his face. He didn't dare to look up. The grandeur and coldness of the room suffocated him. He took a few steps, his knees buckled, and he collapsed heavily onto the expensive sheepskin rug. His voice trembled. He was so pitiful it was nauseating. Madam Chairwoman, I am DeMarcus, former executive of Pinnacle Holdings. I know my status is low, and forgive my audacity for disturbing you, but I've truly been backed into a corner. I beg you, be magnanimous. Open a path to salvation for me. I know your Apex Capital Fund wants to completely acquire Pinnacle. I have the hidden ledgers in my hands, the dirty secrets of the board of directors that you will definitely need. I'll give them all to you. I only beg you to save my life. Lend me $1 million to pay off the thugs. I swear I will do whatever it takes. I'll owe you my life for the rest of my days. Owe me your life? My clear, sharp, even voice echoed in the silent room. I didn't use a microphone and didn't hide my real voice. DeMarcus, bowing his head to the carpet, jolted as if struck by a high-voltage current upon hearing that voice. His shoulders went rigid. That familiar timbre, the voice he had heard thousands of times over 4 years of marriage, the voice of the poor wife he himself had knocked down with a slap in the company lobby just yesterday. How is this possible? He tried to banish the crazy thoughts invading his brain. He slowly raised his head, his panicked gaze, through the dim light, fixed on the woman sitting in the power chair. I slowly raised my hand, took off the wide-brimmed hat, and placed it on the glass table. My face became clearly visible under the lamplight. Sharp, cold, my lips painted with dark red lipstick, twisted into a smile of extreme contempt. Imani? Why are you here? It can't be. What are you doing here? Where's the chairman? Did you sneak in here to set me up? Yes, security. This is an imposter, he screamed in a crazed, broken voice. He tried to jump up, but my two guards immediately stepped forward, pressed down hard on his shoulders, and forced him back to the floor. Malik stepped out from behind me, threw a folder of documents in front of DeMarcus, and said coldly, "Open your eyes wide and look. Sitting before you is Imani Jones, the chairwoman of the board of directors, owner of 65% of the shares in the Apex Capital Investment Fund. The person you are crawling on your knees to, begging to be his dog, is the wife you threw away. No, this is a hallucination. You're just a country girl from the sticks, a pathetic secretary living off me. Where would you get billions to be a chairwoman? You're lying to me. You're all putting on a show to trick me. Am I lying to you, DeMarcus? Or did your own foolishness and greed deceive you? Did you think an incompetent employee like you would suddenly start signing multi-million-dollar contracts, suddenly get promoted to executive just like that? Do you think those sharp analytical reports that helped you score points with the board of directors came from your own brain? I did all of it, secretly pulling the strings, using Apex Capital's resources to mold this fake throne for you. I hid my identity, stooped to the role of a simple wife, only because I wanted to protect your pathetic ego, because I, like a fool, believed that you sincerely loved me. Imani, so you're really the chairwoman? If you're so rich, why did you let me live so poorly? Why didn't you tell me? He stammered. His eyes bulged out of their sockets. The monstrous truth was gradually destroying his entire perception of reality. The last remnants of his patriarchal arrogance were broken and trampled. If I had told you, how would I have been able to see your vile, ungrateful nature? When you beat your chest and called yourself a successful man, you turned around and started trampling on me. You contemptuously said I was beneath you. You hit me in the middle of the lobby to show off in front of that girl, LaToya. You said only God could save me. Well, today your God is sitting right in front of you. How does it feel when the one who was supposedly living off you has taken away your entire career and thrown you out on the street to be torn apart by thugs? Is that easy to swallow, ex-husband? Imani, I was wrong. I'm a clown. I was blind. That LaToya, she poisoned my mind. She bewitched me. That's why I treated you so badly. My love, for the sake of our 4 years of marriage, I'm begging you, have mercy, spare me. I've realized my mistake. You're so rich, $1 million is nothing to you. Give me the money and save me, or the thugs will put a bullet in me. Go after my mother. Save me. I'll leave everything. I'll come back to you. I'll kneel and serve you for the rest of my life. He slumped onto the carpet, clutching his chest, begging nonstop. His tears and snot smeared across his battered face. A worthless man who had hit rock bottom, ready to sell all his pride for survival. Marriage? You're trying to bargain with me with that word? When you used the $2 million you stole from the company to buy an apartment and bags for your mistress, did you remember our marriage? When your mother forced me to serve her fake socialite friends like a maid and cursed me, calling me a broke loser, did you remember our marriage? I have plenty of money, but giving charity to trash like you. It disgusts me to give you even a penny. I stood up, leaned down, and looked directly into his desperate eyes. My voice became a suffocating whisper, carrying the breath of death. You want to ask for $1 million to pay off the thugs? What a pity, but that gang has already received an order from me. I paid Big Bo that $1 million for you. Really? Oh, Imani, you paid for me? I knew you still loved me. Don't be so quick to celebrate. I paid Big Bo that money not to clear your debt, but to buy it. Now, I am your legal creditor. And I've ordered Big Bo not to lay a finger on you, not to kill you. I want you to live. To live as a cripple, wandering the streets without a home, hiding in wild fear, and enduring the contempt of all of society. And tomorrow, the police will come for you for the embezzlement case. Enjoy your days rotting in prison. And remember my face well today. I sharply slapped his hands away as they reached for me. A cold nod to the guards was the order to throw him out. No, Imani, you can't do this. You're a devil. You're a she-devil in the flesh. Let me go. I don't want to go to prison. His insane screams and curses echoed down the hallway as the two strong guards dragged him out the door. He thrashed in hopelessness, like an animal being led to slaughter. The massive door slammed shut, completely cutting off that filthy sound. I straightened up, adjusted the collar of my suit, and looked with a calm gaze at the nighttime Atlanta, sparkling with lights outside the window. The game is over. The traitor has officially fallen to the bottom of hell. Karma is never late. It only waits for the perfect moment to deliver the fatal blow. The night's downpour lasted until dawn, washing the dust from Atlanta, but it could never wash away the filth from human hearts. In the townhouse complex in Buckhead, the place the Williams mother and son still considered their impregnable fortress, a brutal truth was quietly approaching, carrying a death sentence for their arrogance. At exactly 7 a.m., while the mist had not yet lifted, 3 government cars with blue plates belonging to the sheriff's department, accompanied by representatives from Apex Capital's partner bank, braked sharply in front of the gilded, wrought iron gates. With them arrived a squad of security personnel in black uniforms, carrying rolls of red tape that read, "Property sized." I sat in the warm space of my penthouse, holding a cup of strong espresso. My calm eyes were fixed on the computer screen, directly connected to the camera of the team on site. True power isn't about screaming in your enemy's face, but about enjoying your tea while, with a wave of your hand, you cut off all their oxygen. Dozens of miles away from me, a loud banging on the gate shattered the silence of the elite neighborhood. A few minutes later, Mama Rose, having thrown on a silk robe with her hair disheveled from sleep, angrily came out of the house. Her wrinkled face clearly showed the irritation of a nouveau riche whose sleep had been disturbed. "What's all this racket you're making at this hour? What are you banging on like crazy people? Do you even know this is the mansion of a Pinnacle Holdings executive? Who are you to be banging on my door? Get lost or I'll call the police right now. They'll lock you all up." One of the bailiffs stepped forward. Not a muscle twitched on his face. He held up a folder of documents with a red seal and showed it through the gap in the gate. "You are Mama Rose, mother of DeMarcus, correct? We are sheriff's deputies, together with representatives from the bank." DeMarcus used this mansion as collateral for a $500,000 loan. He has currently been fired from the corporation for embezzlement, has lost his ability to pay, and has seriously violated the terms of the agreement. The bank has issued a decision for the immediate freezing and seizure of the property under the emergency fraud clause. We demand that you open the gates. What? Seizure of property? Have you all lost your minds? This house was bought with my son's sweat and blood. What collateral? What termination? My DeMarcus is a golden boy. Get out of here, you scammers, she screamed, clinging to the iron bars, flatly refusing to open them. But the law has no time for cheap hysterics. The lead deputy gave a signal, and a security officer immediately took out bolt cutters, snapping the lock in seconds. The heavy iron gates swung open, and the team of deputies flooded in like a torrent of water, completely drowning out Mama Rose's shrill screams. Inside the living room, the expensive furniture, crystal vases, and Italian leather sofas that Mama Rose cherished like the apple of her eye were now being ruthlessly covered with red tape. She ran in a panic from corner to corner, trying to grab the television, clutching at a porcelain vase, but the security guards resolutely pushed her aside. Just at that moment, DeMarcus dragged his beaten body in from the street. After that night in the lounge where I had crushed his pride, and after the thug's threats, he hadn't dared to go anywhere, just wandered aimlessly and then ran home. Seeing the red tape crisscrossing the entire living room, his knees gave out, and he collapsed right on the doorstep. DeMarcus, son, you're back. Tell me, who are these people? Why are they saying you were fired, that you mortgaged the house? You're a director. Answer me. Mama. Mama. We've lost everything. Imani. She's the chairwoman of Apex Capital. She controls everything. She set a trap. She cut off all our paths. We've lost everything. Hearing her son's confession, Mama Rose froze as if struck by lightning. Her eyes widened, her pupils dilated, her breath caught. The daughter-in-law she had forced to wash floors at 4 a.m., the woman she had humiliated and called a broke nobody, turned out to be the person holding the financial life of their entire family in her hands. This truth was too cruel, too terrifying for her shallow and greedy mind. The time for voluntary surrender of the property has expired. We require DeMarcus and Mama Rose to take only the most essential personal belongings and leave the premises. All valuable property is seized against the debts. Please exit. Security unhesitatingly approached and took the mother and son by the arms. Mama Rose struggled desperately, threw herself at the coffee table, clung to its leg, and howled so loudly she lost her voice. No, I'm not going anywhere. This is my house. I'm a rich woman. I won't go out on the street. Let me go, you robbers. Imani, you bitch, come here and kill me if you can. You took my house. God is going to punish you for this. But these hopeless curses dissolved into the air. 2 guards forcefully pried her off the table and dragged her out through the front door. DeMarcus was led out next. He hung his head, not daring to look at the neighbors who had gathered at the gate, whispering and pointing fingers. It started to drizzle again outside. The mother and son were thrown out beyond the gilded iron gates, tossed onto the wet sidewalk. Their only personal belongings were 2 plastic bags of crumpled clothes lying forlornly beside them. The mansion gates slammed shut with a clang. A huge chain lock was securely fastened. A bank notice of property seizure hung coldly on them. Just yesterday, they were at the top, depriving me of a piece of bread and kicking me out of the company lobby. And today, in the cold rain, they officially became homeless, with empty hands, not a penny to their names, with a huge multi-million-dollar debt, and under the threat of reprisal from criminals. I finished my tea. The corners of my lips formed a perfect arc. The play for a ruler had reached its climax. When a person falls to the very bottom of despair, they cling to anything that seems shiny, even if it's just a sharp shard of glass. DeMarcus, too, sitting trembling under the awning of a closed 2-4-hour convenience store, and looking at his crying mother with her swollen eyes, directed the last spark of pathetic hope in his empty head toward LaToya, the assistant HR director, the rich girl who, he was sure, was carrying his son, his heir. He thought that if he came to her with the love she had always sworn, she would use her family's money to save him from this catastrophe. He turned out his pockets, found a couple of $20 bills, just enough for a cheap Uber. Leaving Mama Rose huddled on the sidewalk, he rushed to LaToya's luxury apartment. But he didn't know that girls like LaToya, who live off their looks and schemes, can smell money better than any animal. That morning, when the order for DeMarcus's termination spread throughout the Pinnacle network, LaToya instantly realized that this sinking ship would no longer be of any use. She wasn't foolish enough to stay and share the burden of his corporate embezzlement debts. When DeMarcus was desperately banging on her apartment door, LaToya was hastily stuffing wads of cash, diamond jewelry, and several Hermes bags into 2 large suitcases. The frantic knocking on the door made her frown in annoyance. She went and unlocked it. Seeing the tattered, soaking wet, and reeking of failure DeMarcus, LaToya immediately stepped back. Undisguised disgust was written in her eyes. Toya, save me. I've lost everything. The bank took the house. The company fired me. My mom and I have nowhere to go. Lend me $50,000 to pay off the thugs. Ask your father to be a guarantor. I swear, after all this, I'll start over. I'll marry you. I'll give you and our child a legal status. He reached out his dirty hand, trying to grab her arm. But LaToya quickly dodged and roughly pushed him away. Let go of me. Are you crazy? Coming here screaming? Guarantor, marry me? Look at yourself in a mirror. What's the difference between you and a homeless man to ask for my hand? What are you talking about? Yesterday you said you loved me. You said you wanted to have my baby. We were planning to kick Imani out to build a happy family. You're carrying my child, Toya. Hearing this, Latoya burst out laughing. Her shrill, sarcastic, and shameless laughter shattered all of DeMarcus's last illusions. She crossed her arms, tilted her chin up, and looked at the pathetic man. Your child? Haha. DeMarcus, you called yourself an executive, but you're as dumb as a box of rocks. Did you really think this baby I'm carrying is yours? Then whose is it? You cheated on me? Let me open your eyes. The real father of this baby is the CEO of a rival corporation. He has a wife and kids, so he can't show his face. He just gives me money. I needed a fool with a solid reputation to cover for me, to legitimize this pregnancy and divert everyone's attention. And you, a greedy country boy who got a taste of money, who loves to show off, you voluntarily agreed to be my ATM. You thought I loved you? I loved your credit card. I loved your executive chair. Now you're a criminal with empty hands. Why would I keep you here to dirty my house? Every word from Latoya was like a cleaver blow, mincing DeMarcus's male dignity into mush. His eyes bulged, his jaw clenched until it bled. He had betrayed his ride-or-die woman, hit her in front of everyone, took her sweat and blood only to run after a whore pregnant with another man's child. He thought he was a smart hunter, but he turned out to be just a fool raising another man's baby, a puppet they played with as they pleased. You filthy! You cheated me. You took all my money, bought a house, a car, and now you want to dump me? I'll kill you. Give me back my money. DeMarcus lost his mind. He roared and lunged at her, intending to strangle her. But Latoya was ready. She stepped back, pulled the pin on a can of pepper spray she kept in her pocket, and shot a stream right into DeMarcus's eyes. Ag, my eyes. He clutched his face, screaming and rolling on the floor in unbearable pain. Latoya coldly stepped over his writhing body, picked up her 2 large suitcases, and dragged them to the exit. As she left, she didn't forget to throw a sarcastic line. Lie there and enjoy your karma, fake husband. I've already called people to sell all the furniture. In a minute, security will come and throw you out on the street. Ciao. The door slammed shut with a bang. DeMarcus was left lying on the floor. His eyes burned so badly he couldn't open them. Tears and snot streamed down his face. The bitter humiliation, the realization of his own foolishness, destroyed all his psychological defenses. He had lost his wife, his career, his house, and now he had lost his last illusion of an elite family. He was left with nothing, alone and desperate at the very bottom of the filth. I watched it all through the listening device and gently closed the laptop lid. Don't celebrate too soon, Latoya. You think you can get away with Apex Capital's money that easily? At Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, my security team and the police have already set a net, waiting for you to bring that suitcase full of money laundering evidence right into their hands. And as for you, DeMarcus, your real sentence under the law is just beginning. The destruction of his property and psyche was just personal revenge. But for greedy criminals without morals or honor like DeMarcus, it was necessary to nail them to the public pillar of shame and subject them to the punishment they deserved under the law. This would be the perfect finishing blow I had prepared for them. At exactly 10 a.m. on the 3rd day after the earthquake in the Pinnacle Holdings lobby, thousands of employees were working calmly in the central office when suddenly all the monitors on the internal network flickered. An email from the board of directors, marked extremely important, appeared on every screen. The email contained no lengthy explanations, only a link to a cloud storage. When curious employees clicked on it, what appeared before their eyes caused a tsunami that swept through all departments. The first file, a detailed statement of fund movements, where numbers highlighted in red served as irrefutable proof. Former executive DeMarcus had colluded with subcontractors, forged material purchase invoices, and inflated project costs by 30% to embezzle more than $2 million into his own pocket. Every transfer of funds to his mistress Latoya's account for the purchase of bags, jewelry, and the security deposit for a luxury apartment was exposed with precise dates, times, and transaction codes that could not be disputed. The second file. Video and photos from hidden surveillance cameras showing DeMarcus and Latoya embracing, conspiring to frame me, and mocking their subordinates, calling them idiots who were easy to manipulate. All the dirty and vulgar language of the once respectable boss was put on display, destroying the image of a talented and upstanding man he had so carefully built. But the peak of public outrage was the last video. A close-up of the events in the lobby. The moment I brought the lunch was humiliated by LaToya, and the instant DeMarcus kicked his ride or die in the stomach, shouting the insult, "Only God can save you now." The truth about the origin of the assets, that I was the hidden chairwoman of Apex Capital, was attached at the very end of the email like a steel manifesto of justice. Thousands of employees exploded with anger. Those who had previously flattered DeMarcus now did a 180-degree turn, competing to see who could curse him more vehemently in the internal chats. They were disgusted by his hypocrisy. They despised the rotten character of a freeloader pretending to be a big shot. They leaked this evidence to the press and business forums. In less than a morning, the name DeMarcus became the most popular search query, a synonym for baseness, fraud, and black-hearted ingratitude. He was officially canceled on all fronts of society. He would never have a chance to hold his head up again. But the nets of justice were not limited to social media. At the same time the email was sent, at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, LaToya, with her hat pulled down and wearing dark glasses, was rolling 2 large suitcases toward the security screening area to flee the country. She thought she had fooled everyone. But as soon as she presented her passport, 2 officers from the Financial Fraud Division approached and loudly read out a travel ban. The police demanded she open her suitcases. In front of hundreds of passengers, wads of cash, diamonds, and expensive watches were put on public display. This was material evidence of corporate fund embezzlement and money laundering. LaToya's face turned whiter than chalk. Her legs gave out and she collapsed onto the airport floor. Her glasses flew off, revealing a face contorted with extreme terror. Cold handcuffs snapped onto her wrists. Her dreams of escaping with the money and her illegitimate child officially ended behind bars. And where was our main character, DeMarcus, now? With empty hands, temporarily blinded by pepper spray, hungry, without a single penny in his pocket, he dragged his wounded body through dirty alleys, returning to where his mother was waiting, huddled from the cold. They hugged, crying bitterly under the awning of an abandoned storefront. When the wail of a police siren tore through the silence of the alley, surrounding the mother and son, DeMarcus no longer had the strength to struggle. He listened as the officer loudly read the arrest warrant, on charges of breach of trust, embezzlement, and fraud. Mama Rose wailed, beat her chest, scratched the asphalt, begging the police to let her son go. But there is no room in the law for the tears of villains. DeMarcus was pushed into the back of a police van. The moment the iron door slammed shut and darkness engulfed him, he truly understood the price he had to pay for his greed and ingratitude. I stood on the 60th floor of the tower, looking down at the tiny police cars driving away with their sirens wailing. A feeling of light, absolute peace filled my chest. The huge net had closed, not missing a single trash fish. My punishment had not required a single drop of my sweat. All it took was intelligence and the cold power of money to expose their crime and hand them over to the law. Life is very fair. Those who despise feelings, who trample on the dignity of others to climb higher, will eventually be crushed to dust by that same height. Ahead of them lie only long years behind cold bars, hard labor, and late repentance. The legal battle was over, but spiritually, I had one last gift for them, the most brutal psychological blow, when they would be cornered so much that they would cast aside the last remnants of their pride to beg for their lives at my feet. The storm hit Atlanta, bringing wild winds and a solid wall of rain, washing away the dirt from every corner of the metropolis. Inside my mansion on the riverbank, where I had recently moved, it was quiet, warm, and impeccably luxurious. I leaned back in the dark brown leather armchair, gently swirling a glass of deep red wine. My calm eyes were relaxed, watching the large surveillance camera monitor hanging on the wall. True power isn't about personally taking a knife and cutting your enemy, but in the moment you sit in safety, enjoying the light tartness of wine, and watch your enemies crawl to your feet themselves, floundering in the dirty puddle they themselves created. Many would be surprised why DeMarcus, who was taken away in a police van in the previous part, ended up at the gates of my house tonight. It's simple. The law has its own rules. Mama Rose, in a fit of desperation, seeing her only son and heir behind bars, sold the last remnants of her conscience and, on her knees, begged a small sum from distant relatives from the country to post bail and get DeMarcus released pending trial. The investigator allowed him out on bail for one purpose, so he could find a way to compensate Pinnacle Holdings and the Apex Capital Fund for the tens of millions of dollars in damages in hopes of a lighter sentence. But in Atlanta, when you've been completely canceled, when your reputation stinks worse than garbage, who would dare to give you money? Friends turned their backs, partners despised him, and his mistress Latoya was already in jail for money laundering. Cornered, without a home, without food, the mother and son had only one path: to crawl to me, the hidden chairwoman, and, incidentally, the ride-or-die woman he had slapped in the face in the lobby. They were sure that, remembering my kindness and blind devotion from the past, if they just put on a tearful performance, I would soften, withdraw the complaint, and give them a chance at life. Through the infrared cameras, under the light of a street lamp in the pouring rain, I saw two dark silhouettes. They were clinging with 10 fingers to the wrought iron gates of my house. It was DeMarcus and Mama Rose. Their appearance was so pathetic, dirty, and wretched that no pen could describe it. DeMarcus's designer shirt was torn and stained with mud. His face was swollen from the collector's beatings. Mama Rose looked like a shadow. The silk dress she once boasted about to her neighbors clung to her thin body. She trembled from the piercing night cold. DeMarcus relentlessly pounded his hands on the iron gates, but these weak blows were drowned out by the peals of thunder. Mama Rose collapsed against the wet brick pillar, weeping hysterically and begging toward the brightly lit mansion. I smirked slightly and put the wineglass on the glass table. I had enough patience for this show. It was time to go out, not to open the door, but to deliver the final hammer blow, shattering the pathetic remnants of their illusions. I threw on a long black wool coat that reached my ankles, took a large umbrella, and went outside. Around me, 4 bodyguards in black suits instantly opened their umbrellas, forming a solid wall. I walked along the gravel path to the main gates. The security motion sensor floodlights flashed on, illuminating the 2 pale, horror-stricken faces of the family. Seeing me, a light of desperate survival instinct flashed in DeMarcus's eyes. He rushed forward, pressing his battered face against the cold iron bars. Tears mixed with the rain, streaming down his chin. "Imani! Imani, my wife! It's me, your husband. Open the door, Imani. I realize it now. I was wrong. I was blind. I was crazy to treat you so badly. I'm begging you. Imani, have mercy. Spare me. Let me live. The thugs are after me. The police want to lock me up for 18 years. You're the chairwoman. You have money. Withdraw the complaint, Imani. Save me. I'll do whatever you want. I'll make it up to you for the rest of my life. Imani, my sweet daughter-in-law, I'm on my knees. I apologize. It was me, old fool. I didn't understand anything. It was me who put stupid ideas into Marcus's head. You are our savior. You are a saint. I beg you, for the sake of our 4 years together, open the door. Let us take shelter from the rain for one night. I'm freezing to death. I swear I will do anything you ask, just don't let me die on the streets. For the sake of 4 years. For the sake of us. Hearing those words from your mouth sounds so nauseating and filthy. Mama Rose, you call me a saint? But when you forced me to serve your fake socialite friends like a maid, when you threw your credit card bills in my face and demanded I pay them, did you consider me a person? Or was I just livestock for you to take out your new money complexes on? I was wrong. Scold me, beat me, do whatever you want, but I beg you, spare DeMarcus. He's your husband. He once shielded you from the rain with an umbrella. He bought you food. How can you have the heart to push your husband to his death? Don't you dare say the word husband to me, DeMarcus. You say you shielded me with an umbrella, that you loved me. Then what about that day when you were hugging Latoya in the lobby? You kicked me in the stomach. Did you remember you were my husband then? You slapped me. You screamed at me in front of hundreds of people. You called me a useless freeloader. You said only God could save me. You were so tough then. Your executive chair was so high. So why are you crawling here now? Crying before the freeloader and begging like a broke loser? Latoya cheated me. She played my mind, said she was carrying my son, but in reality, she made me raise another man's child. I lost everything. Imani. She stole my money. I know but you're so rich. You have a whole corporation. All you have to do is say the word and I'll live. Spare me. I don't want to go to prison. They'll kill me in there. She cheated you because of your own vanity and greed. You abandoned a wife who invested billions to pull you out of poverty and ran after a calculating girl. That was your choice. And now that karma has caught up with you, you want me to clean up the consequences? Where do you get off having that kind of audacity? I'll tell you what. The $1 million debt you owe the thugs, I've already bought it, but not to clear your debt. I bought it so they would follow you, torture you, and make you live in animal fear. And the law? You stole money, forged documents. You will pay for your greed with your freedom for the rest of your life. Imani, you heartless bitch, you're the devil, you set me up. You hid who you were just to drive my family to ruin. Aren't you afraid of God? You've pushed me into the grave. I won't leave you in peace, even as a ghost. A devil? Yes. If you trample my kindness, if you mistake it for weakness, then I'd rather be a devil who crushes you with my own hands than a saint whose blood you continue to drink. Don't you dare play the victim. Every step you took, every mistake you made, every signature on the embezzlement documents was done of your own free will and because of your own greed. I am just the person who stood in the shadows and turned on the light so the whole world could see your rotten essence. Imani, I'm dying. If you don't feel sorry for me, have some human decency. Open the door. For parasites, there's no such thing as human decency. Stop whining here. Your acting is terrible. I'm bored of watching this. I gave a signal to a guard. He stepped forward and threw a light brown envelope through the iron bars. It slapped right into a puddle in front of DeMarcus. Open it and look. This is my last gift to you. Inside were the divorce papers, along with a court decision stating that all assets created over the past 4 years are the exclusive property of the Apex Capital Fund. You don't have a right to a single penny. Whether you sign it or not doesn't matter. Tomorrow, when you're sitting in a cell, the court will close this matter itself. Now take it and get out of my sight before I release the dogs. After speaking, I didn't look at their faces, contorted with extreme despair, for a second longer. I turned with a straight back and my head held high, and walked under the black umbrella back into the house. Behind me, thunder rumbled, mixing with DeMarcus's hysterical screams and curses, and Mama Rose's choked sobs. But those sounds no longer disturbed my mind in the slightest. The villa gates were securely closed, completely cutting off my royal world from the dirty puddle in which they would have to drown forever. That night, the rain continued, but the flame of hatred in my heart was extinguished forever. The villains had received their humiliating sentence, and tomorrow, justice would officially slam the doors of their lives shut with cold iron bars. After that brutal, stormy night, the wheel of karma made its final, merciless, and irreversible turns. Those who had stood on the peak of illusion, beat their chests, and used fake money and power to trample human dignity, finally bowed their heads before the law and the court of public opinion. Exactly 1 week later, the sentencing hearing took place for the shocking economic case of former Pinnacle Holdings executive, DeMarcus. I didn't attend the trial in person. I no longer needed to see his pathetic face. Thanks to the work of a team of top lawyers from the Apex Capital Fund, ironclad evidence was presented. Breach of trust, embezzlement of property, forgery of documents, and the misappropriation of tens of millions of dollars. Everything was laid out so transparently that the defense attorneys were left without a single loophole. The court sentenced DeMarcus to 18 years in prison. The moment the judge struck the wooden gavel, pronouncing the sentence, I watched on a live feed Malik had sent me as DeMarcus collapsed onto the defendant's bench. His face was gaunt, his eyes sunken and lifeless. A short haircut revealed the exhausted look of a man deprived of all oxygen for life. He no longer screamed or cried. The brutal truth had completely destroyed his last line of defense. 18 years of his youth, 18 years behind cold bars, years of lockdown, the soul-crushing humiliation for a man who thought he was an eagle but turned out to be a parasite torn from its host. It was too high a price, but absolutely deserved for his greed and contempt for those who had stood by him through hard times. As for Mama Rose, seeing her only son, her golden goose, taken away in handcuffs in a prison van, her psyche finally collapsed. Without money, without a home, carrying the shame of the entire neighborhood on her back and rejected by relatives, she went mad. They say that in the slums on the outskirts of the city, you can sometimes see a disheveled old woman in dirty rags. She collects trash, rummages through dumpsters, and her mouth constantly mutters curses against LaToya. And sometimes she cries, calls for Director DeMarcus, and brags to passers-by that she has a huge mansion and expensive cars. The psychological death sentence and the punishment of poverty had fallen upon that evil woman in full measure. And the mistress, LaToya, the one who had arrogantly kicked my lunchbox in the corporate lobby, did not escape justice either. She was sentenced to 5 years in prison for complicity in money laundering and dealing in criminally obtained property. The child in her womb, the weapon she wanted to use to milk DeMarcus, was handed over to Child Protective Services after being born in state prison. The old boss, the child's real father, fearing for his career, completely cut ties with her, leaving her to survive behind bars alone. Once, they had acted out a disgusting play about the elite together, And now, hand in hand, they went to hell to pay for their sins. Closing these stormy pages of the past, I rewarded myself with a long vacation on a private island in the Maldives. Sitting in a lounge chair on the snow-white sand and looking at the emerald sea sparkling under the bright sun, I took a sip of excellent champagne. The sea breeze played with my hair, bringing a feeling of absolute freedom and lightness. Pinnacle Holdings, under the direct management of Apex Capital and Malik's leadership, developed brilliantly, entering international markets. Profits grew, and having gotten rid of the talentless parasites, this giant mechanism worked smoothly and transparently. I no longer had to hide behind the mask of a country secretary or a submissive wife. I proudly stepped into the light, becoming one of the most powerful female entrepreneurs whose name graced the covers of leading financial magazines. I directed part of my huge fortune to create charitable foundations to help single mothers, girls who had suffered violence and humiliation from their husbands' families, helping them start their own businesses and get back on their feet. Looking back on the 4 years of my youth, trampled in that toxic marriage, I no longer feel regret. Any pain eventually heals, and sometimes difficulties are given to us not to destroy us, but as the cruelest test to turn a piece of coal into a sparkling, indestructible diamond. Dear women who are quietly listening to my story today, if you are in a relationship where your sacrifice is taken for granted, if the man you love tramples your dignity, if his family despises you just because you don't bring them financial gain, please, never choose blind submission. Unconditional patience will never turn a villain into an angel. It only encourages their greed and baseness, which will inflate to such a size that they will swallow you whole. Never believe empty vows. Never let your life depend on a man's wallet or mood. Your best weapon, your most reliable umbrella in a storm, is not weakness, not beauty, but financial independence and a sharp mind. The money you earn with your own sweat and blood will buy you dignity, will buy you the right to be the master of the game. When you have money, you have the right to say no to humiliation. You have the right to proudly walk out of a rotting marriage without trembling in fear of how you will live tomorrow. Stay kind, but your kindness must have thorns. Don't be afraid to be cruel when necessary, because misplaced softness is a knife you use to cut your own veins. The greatest, most high-class revenge on those who betrayed and abandoned you is not tears or scenes of jealousy. It is to rise from the ashes, build your own empire with your own hands, and live such a brilliant, successful, rich, and happy life that that person will never again have the right to even look at you. Let them stand at the bottom of the abyss, gnawing themselves with regret for throwing away a priceless diamond for a pile of trash. Every morning when the sun rises is a chance to start life anew. If you are crying in the dark of night, allow yourself to be weak today. But tomorrow morning, wipe away your tears, put on your bold red lipstick, wear your best outfit, and go out into the world to fight for your true worth. You were born a queen. Don't throw away your crown for someone who doesn't deserve it. If my story of blood and tears, the story of the path from the deepest pain to the pinnacle of power, has touched a corner of your heart and given you the fire of courage to boldly stand up, please leave a comment, share your thoughts below. There is no judgment here, only empathy and the invisible embrace of kindred souls. Like this to spread this power, and don't forget to subscribe. We will continue to walk together through deep, healing, and inspiring life stories in the next videos. The sky outside has become clear again. The storm has completely dissipated. I close the story of my life here. I wish all women in this world, even after going through 1,000 storms, to always stand firm on their feet, keep a cool head in the face of any intrigue, and have a heart warm enough to heal their own wounds. Goodbye and see you in the next pulsating rhythms of life. I wish you a peaceful and brilliant destiny.